Special report drawing on an American tradition you know, looking at the results of a president's first 100 days in office. We are now on the eve of Trump's first 100 days, a busy, sometimes chaotic period, not only for him as a president, if you follow news and politics, but really a chaotic period for the country at times, dealing with his choices and actions as president. This benchmark dates back to FDR's sort of high watermark for a productive first 100 days. President Roosevelt combating the Depression with over a dozen pieces of major legislation that ranged from banking reform to jobs programs. It was big, assertive, effective leadership, historians would ultimately say, for a big time, a test of the country, of the economy, of what America was going to be. But he did something that goes beyond just that particular era. And I say this as introduction here. FDR capitalized on his election mandate. And that's really what made it a governing tradition, even if we sort of know 100 days is a made-up thing, right? It could be 110, it could be 120. But it matters, and every president won't live up to FDR, but it's a Washington tradition because that political town and the other branches of government know 100 days are the best opening period for a president to get things done. Now, I can tell you Trump's first 100 days is a long way from FDR's record. This year, for all the headlines, the crises, or the bluster, we're going to look right now at the objective facts and results about these 99 days, 100 beginning tomorrow. We're going to focus on key areas of this president's leadership, his priority policy of immigration, something he says he should be judged on, his clashes over the rule of law, and of course, the economy where the Trump administration has faced the most sweeping problems and a very costly rejection of its trade war. This also is the very issue where candidate Trump vowed to focus his second-term governance, vowing to slash prices and inflation.
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president. But if I win, we will rapidly defeat inflation. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast. Starting the day I take the oath of office, I will rapidly drive prices down and we will make America affordable again.
Rapidly drive the prices down. A twist on his well-known campaign slogan, which is familiar and well-known because he plagiarized it from Ronald Reagan, make America great again, make America affordable again. Well, by this January, inflation was already cooling. Stocks were surging. The U.S. economy was the envy of the world, as the economists put it. And Trump took that economy and began with big tariffs on our trading neighbors, Canada and Mexico, continued to pile on more tariffs in what Murdoch's Wall Street Journal dubbed the dumbest trade war in history. Those tariffs rapidly wiped out trillions. Markets lost about 9%. Trump then retreating partly after blowback, then re-upping aspects of his trade war.
They charge us, we charge them.
This, I think fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs.
Burning down the house to cook a steak.
Economic Armageddon.
Trump's trade war wiping trillions of dollars in value from these markets.
I know very few people, very few people, I can probably count them on a hand, who think that this is a good idea.
The president paused his additional tariffs on dozens of our trading partners for the next 90 days.
Now, 90 days may not seem like a long time, but remember, Trump has only been president for 82 days, and it already feels like a goddamn decade.
Who can relate? So 70, 80, 90 days in, it can feel like a long time. That's definitely true for the largest companies in America. The drop was huge for them, about 9%. Compare that to the exact same benchmark across other presidents' first 100 days. Look at this because these are facts. I'm going to leave it up for a second. If you start in the middle there, Obama up 8%. Biden up over 10%, partly because there was a brewing economic rebound, and partly because he didn't mess with it. In other words, you can take the macroeconomic wins and ride them. Look at the right-hand part of your screen. Down over 8% in 100 days, the worst record in this semi-modern era. And much of that, according to all the data we have and the economic analysts, Wall Street CEOs, and everyone else saying it was a direct response to Trump, not a random bad piece of luck, but an 8.6% multi-trillion-dollar rejection of what Wall Street calls his failed trade war. That's the numbers, the data, the facts. Numbers don't lie. That's not an opinion about the policies. It is the result. He vowed a better economy. He vowed lower prices and talked a lot about the markets were going to be happy with him, but launched policies that you see on your screen are bringing forth the opposite. Normally Republican-friendly business leaders now say it could get even worse than what you see in that red line on your screen because the Trump recession could be coming. And politics has polling and snapshots of public views. The economy, though, own type of measurements. We have consumer sentiment under Trump hitting nearly all-time lows. People are anxious or worse feeling about this. Now, the Biden presidency was saddled by those price and inflation worries. So no one's saying that there haven't been problems in our economy. You can go to the inequality that has been getting worse for decades. You can go to the COVID disruptions. But life is usually compared to what? So Americans resented the COVID inflation that Biden oversaw. Now, they're even more upset and resentful of Trump's trade war, the slumping markets, the impact on small businesses, and their daily life. Because on top of all that, they still have a price problem. Meat, poultry, fish, eggs, things people tend to buy to feed their families are seeing prices continue on. That's from Trump's third month here in the 100 days. Other price hikes and surging inflation will continue with the tariffs and until he really rolls them back further. That's what the data shows. Now then, 100 days is a time as well to get bills passed. The honeymoon I mentioned. If presidents win a Congress, it's usually a legislative blitz because they have momentum and control of two branches of government. Well, here, I told you we'd show you the facts. Here they are. President Trump coming up short on that score as well. Look at all of the ways people got bills passed, sometimes with divided or united government, but a lot. Even in the first term, Trump worked to get a bunch passed, but this time he is coming in low. 5 laws, none are major legislation on par with, say, FDR's economic reforms, or remember when Obama passed the stimulus coming into the financial crisis era? That allocated over $700 billion to juice the economy, and he passed it early in the 100 days in February. But Trump is effectively inactive with this Congress. Now, that's bad news for MAGA fans who want MAGA priorities to last, to be written into our long-term laws on the books. Because remember, while other presidential actions can be significant, they can be reversed by a future president if they're just executive policy, not a law. And Trump is famously leaning more on executive orders this time than past presidents, including his first term. This is a significant shift in how he views the presidency. And you can see there in this comparison just how different it is in these 100 days. But the orders also are a weaker part of a president's arsenal because, as mentioned, they can be reversed just by the next president. And if you try to do too much through that instead of working through Congress, courts tend to narrow those efforts. Indeed, the entire Musk set of cuts use executive powers, his proverbial chainsaw, to try to slash temporary spending. None of that has involved going down to Congress and actually having some long-term change in the laws yet, maybe ever. And that's, again, bad news for folks if they want that stuff to last, because courts have blocked some of the Musk-related bids, whether it's trying to oust different rules or destroy USAID. Again, you could pass a law changing or eliminating USAID, but just trying to do it through this fiat means it's less effective in the long run. Musk has talked about saving $150 billion, lower than the earlier claims.
I think we can do at least $2 trillion. I think we'll try for $2 trillion. I think that's like the best case outcome. But I do think that you kind of have to have some overage. I think if we try for $2 trillion, we've got a good shot at getting one. We can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion.
A lot of announcements, a lot of talk, a lot of meetings. This is someone who is in business and made it his business to buy a giant social media platform where he is very focused on messaging and marketing. But unlike most serious people in government who do cuts, and there are a lot of Republicans who have advocated for smaller government and actually proposed budgets to show you what it would look like over the long haul, Musk has basically given few details about this. The Times reports he gave no identifying details on the majority of them after they did an accounting. But there's the conflict of interest that he has been trying to hawk Teslas from his struggling company on the White House lawn, violating pledges that he and the president made about a conflict. And even that hasn't actually yet enriched him the way he might have hoped. To the contrary, financially, the biggest loser of money is Elon Musk out of everyone, because he's also the richest and maybe had the most to lose. But he's down over $122 billion as we approach this magical 100-day mark. Tomorrow, that means Elon Musk has been losing over $1 billion a day. From a market perspective, I guess his allies might wonder how much worse would he be doing if he didn't have all of these insider relationships and access and White House marketing events. But it's a lot of lost money. So this is the economic piece. It's not the only thing going on, but it's affected the largest number of people the quickest. And if Donald Trump had done the opposite, if the markets were up 9%, 10%, we'd be telling you that. It's just not the case. And that brings us to the other reckoning that we are seeing as we approach 100 days tomorrow, which is in a time where people are more upset about Trump's policies, trade war, and entire set of priorities, downing the markets, breaking campaign promises to lower prices that he made. That sets up a lot more scrutiny and adversity, quite frankly, for the other parts of his agenda. Rewiring the way we do democracy, gutting the rule of law, trying to make agencies in the DOJ part of his partisan enforcement machine. So right now, I'm just going to open up to listen to the whole country with the survey they have, including sources ranging from nonpartisan to Fox News, to what Republicans think if you ask them specifically, and what we're hearing from the people 100 days in is a big, wide rejection of Trump's current governing priorities. His approval crashing already to 39%, the worst in 80 years. He's underwater by double digits across the board. If you look specifically at Republicans, most of whom want him to succeed and liked some of what he did and said in the campaign in the first term, this has been a radical departure from his campaign promises. So half of Republicans say he's not focused on the right priorities. Doesn't mean they're about to turn into liberals and vote Democrat. They just think the first 100 days have not been what they wanted, especially after what they heard on the campaign trail. Here's one Republican vet, Karl Rove.
When it gets to the economy, he is in very bad shape. And it's not only that he's in the short term in bad shape, there's also evidence in the poll that no matter, even if he gets his way on certain things like tariffs, that he's not good in the long run. There's some very deep-seated skepticism among ordinary Americans about the effect of the economy, the president's economic policies, both in the short run and the long run.
That's Bush veteran Rove, and he's talking about how these things work, which is when the economy is good enough, people often do tend to give a pass to more of what's happening in Washington. They either don't have to pay attention to it, or they say, well, things seem pretty good. But what if things are going really poorly? Things seem bad, and then they look at other issues with a more skeptical eye. What I'm reporting to you tonight is that's what we're hearing is happening. Broad disapproval across other issues. This is a Fox News poll. And they asked about all these different things. And as you can see, a majority disapprove of Trump on everything but border security. The disapproval also goes across the country. We hear about how we're divided, but he's underwater among all these groups. And then there is the law. The law. What is allowed, what is legal, what is just, has been a huge part of politics over the last decade. On the right, you hear about what Trump calls weaponization and the claims that somehow they're out to get people based on ideology. Among progressives, we've had a debate about policing and Black Lives Matter. And if you follow Washington politics, there's a lot of discussion about recriminations and investigations and subpoenas and all of that. But here's the thing. Donald Trump's second term has had direct clashes with the Supreme Court and actually following the law more than any modern president, except perhaps Nixon, but that was later than the 100 days.